Isn't it remarkable that probably 80% of all golfers are swinging to the left of their target? Could it be that the reason for this widespread phenomenon hasn't been discovered yet? Unfortunately, there is no universal reason, but rather at least 20 different ones. So if your own efforts in teaching yourself seem to have reached a dead end, you should consider taking a look at the following 5 possibilities. 1. Your original diagnosis could have been wrong. 2. Your diagnosis was correct, but by fixing one error, your remaining compensations kicked your whole motion out of balance. 3. Your diagnosis was correct, you fixed your mistake and possible compensations, but by changing one detail, you implanted a new one without even noticing. 4. Your diagnosis was correct, and you know about the compensations that have to be fixed together with the original mistake, and you're careful not to implant a new one, but it just seems too difficult to execute such an unfamiliar motion. 5. You are successful with all the aforementioned points, but you're still confused and you lack consistency because you're misinterpreting the feedback you get. Now, let's take a closer look at all the 5 reasons from the perspective of someone who's coming over the top, i.e. who's swinging from out to in through the golf ball. First of all, there need not be a deeper cause for the number one reason golfers come over the top. Why do golfers come over the top? In the backswing, you have to lift your arms a certain amount. If, for example, you place some head covers under your armpits, these head covers will have to fall down at some point in the backswing. Otherwise, the swing would be way too flat. The fact that you lift your arms in the backswing means that you have to lower them in the downswing. If, for example, you just turn back in the downswing, your hands will come in front of you way too much and you will probably swing from out to in through the golf ball. The lowering of the hands is a little bit terrifying since you have the feeling at the beginning of the downswing that your club head will probably never reach the golf ball if it's kept so long far behind you. And you have to overcome this fear and by probably the feeling that this actually works if you do it correctly. You have to resist the temptation that you want to bring the club head to the ball immediately, or otherwise you will never learn to hit the ball from the inside. So what deeper reasons could prevent you from stopping to come over the top? First of all, you should make sure that your shoulders are aligned properly at the start, because if your shoulders are aligned to the left relative to your feet and hips, this makes it a lot more likely that you're going to start like this and that you're going to angle your whole plane to the left. The thing that is overlooked commonly is the position of the eyes. It is possible that your hips, your feet, your shoulders are aligned correctly, but if your eyes are angled to the left, either at the address position or, which is a little more complicated, somewhere in the backswing, you angle your eyes like this. This also makes it a lot more likely that you're going to end up swinging out to in through the golf ball. The most common reason for someone to swing out to in usually is a top of the backswing position in which the club is pointing too far to the left, which is called laid off, because it makes it very difficult from here to swing down in a way that you're going to attack the ball from the inside. Unfortunately, it is possible that you swing the club back correctly and that you're going to lay it off during the transition, which is the first part, or the part between the backswing and the downswing. And this looks usually like this. And unfortunately, it usually results in just the same thing, that the club gets outside too early and you're going to end up pulling the ball or slicing the ball. The most complicated way of laying the club off would be a laying off motion in the downswing. So that this would mean that your backswing is correct, that your transition is correct, and now all of a sudden the club gets too shallow over here, and then usually this is enough to bring it outside the line even before impact, and you got the same result. Another common mistake is an arm plane which is too steep. If you have an arm plane which is too steep in the backswing, then you have to work too hard usually to lower your arms. You have to lower them a lot more in the downswing, and this ends up usually also in a club which is too far outside, too far in front of you over here, and again the result is an out-to-in swing. The last reason I would like to mention is a shoulder turn which is insufficient relative to your arm swing. For example, if you have a normal shoulder turn and you swing your arms back like this would be a good backswing, but what you can see very often is a backswing which looks like this. The student has the arms as far back as in a full swing, but the shoulder turn is only 45 degrees or 50 degrees. Or if you have a shoulder turn which is 90 degrees, but your arms swing back this far, again, this is not enough, and then usually you will come over the top in the downswing. Another example of a faulty diagnosis, besides overlooking deeper causes, is a misdiagnosis. A good example for a misdiagnosis would be a push slice which is caused by an open club face. No matter how far you swing to the left, if your club face is very open at impact, your ball is going to start to the right, as I'm demonstrating here. You could see I was swinging way to the left and the ball still started to the right, and it would have curved to the right even more. And if you're going to try to fix your downswing with your path first, in this case, you're going to end up attacking the ball more from the inside, still with an open club face, and the ball is going to start even further to the right, and it's going to curve even further to the right. So it is very important if you're push slicing the golf ball, you need to fix the face first and close the face. Another myth is the fact that many people believe that every time someone comes over the top, the reason is an exaggerated shoulder turn in the downswing. And it is true that this is possible, and in my experience 10% of all the golfers who are swinging like this do it because they are turning their shoulders too excessively, but 90% do it like this. They have a motion in which the hands are getting out too far and the club is too steep, but you can do this without turning your shoulders at all. And if you have a swing like this and then you're trying to retard your shoulder turn even more, it's going to be very difficult. So in this case, you should concentrate on lowering your arms more and keeping your club head behind you as long as possible. Another reason why people are struggling if they're pull slicing the ball or if they're swinging from out to in is that they think that a backswing which is too flat will always result in a downswing which is too steep. And this is actually not true. There are many golfers who are swinging back like this and swinging down like this. Actually, this is even more likely that you're going to swing down like this if you take it away too flat. Of course, there are golfers who are swinging like this, and you should first of all be aware that there's a discrepancy between your backswing and your downswing. And if you fix, in this case, your backswing first, usually what happens is this. Your downswing is going to get even steeper and even more from out to in. So in this case, what you want to fix first is your downswing. And as soon as you're drawing the ball maybe even too much, then you can fix your backswing. And a final myth that is very common is if, for example, someone has a motion in which the club is getting too steep and his club head is getting outside, but he thinks that the hands are moving out too far, then he will usually try to swing down and do a motion which is similar to pulling an agitator. And what happens in this case is his club will get even steeper, because if you're in this position and now you're pulling down your hands vertically, your shaft wants to get vertical as well. And if you've been too vertical in the first place and you're trying to do this, you're going to end up so steep that usually not your slice is going to be exaggerated, but usually you're going to end up hitting every shot off the toe, and maybe that extreme so that the ball will start to the right and you think that's a slice again, and then you get all confused. So it's very important to analyze what actually happens. Is it your hands getting out too much? Is it, in some cases, your shoulder turn which is too much? Or is your club getting too steep, and then act accordingly? Now, I saved the best for last. It is a widespread notion, especially among golf pros, that the reason for an out-to-in swing is a messed up kinetic chain. What is a kinetic chain? It is a very useful concept of how to maximize the club head speed. In a sound golf swing, you start your forward motion from the ground up. You start by pushing your right foot against the ground to move the lower body first, and this mainly lateral motion will shortly turn into a rotary motion of the hips, and this will pull your shoulders down, and after that the speed of the arms reaches a maximum, and the last part that will reach maximum speed is the club through the unhinging of the wrists, and the right anatomical term would be ulnar deviation. The same principle applies in many other sports. For example, if you're throwing a ball, if you're hitting a baseball or a tennis ball. And a common mistake is the activation of the hands way before it's their turn. If you start the downswing by throwing the club head at the ball, you will ruin everything. So there's no doubt that the kinetic chain is active in every good golf swing. The only question is, when and how should you correct a faulty kinetic chain? And here my opinion differs quite a bit from that of my colleagues. I think a slicer should first learn to draw the ball and then work on his kinetic chain. If a slicer, for example, has an insufficient hip turn during the start of his downswing, he will have a much harder time to get rid of his out-to-in motion if he starts by turning his hips more. Since every degree of hip turn will turn your shoulders with it, unless you actively retard your shoulder turn, but this is very complicated, turning your hips more and your shoulders less. So why not forget about the shoulder turn altogether and start by moving the arms down first. And you can still speed up things as soon as you're able to hit draws. Believe me, you will learn much faster if you follow this step-by-step approach instead of trying to learn everything at once. And yes, I know the tour players all learned this stuff intuitively and probably all at once at a very young age, but they are super talents, and they certainly haven't been slicers for years. There's one thing that you have to be aware of if you change your swing path. The swing path is also responsible for the low point of your swing. For example, if I swing on the correct plane, you can see that I will probably hit the ball and the turf at the same time, but as soon as I swing down like this, you can see how the bottom of my swing moves forward. Usually you can see that a golfer who swings down like this will play his ball pretty much opposite to his left foot, so very far forward in his stance, because this is where his low point is. This makes sense as long as you swing like this, but as soon as you fix your downswing, you should also correct your ball position and play the ball further back in your stance. Another thing that you can see a lot is that the golfer who's got the one mistake of moving his low point forward has a second mistake which moves his low point backwards. For example, a scooping motion in which your club head overtakes your hands will usually result in hitting the ground too early. But if you combine the two motions, swinging out to in and scooping, you might end up hitting the turf exactly at the right spot. But as soon again as you fix one part, you are in trouble. So what you can do in this case is play the ball off the tee when you're starting to work on your path, because the tee will compensate for the fact that your angle of attack might be too shallow now when your path is correct, but you're still scooping the ball. And then you can lower the tee, and after a while you might try off the grass again. Another thing that happens often is that someone who swings from out to in will also see that he's going to hit too much ground. And usually it only takes one traumatic experience, and after this, when he hits that much divot, he's gonna do it almost automatically, that he's gonna try to avoid hitting too much into the ground. And the easier to fix motion would be if he tries to avoid ground by standing up through the shot. Because in this case, you first of all try it off the tee, and then you lower the tee, and after a while he will realize, okay, it's not necessary to stand up anymore. The more complicated version is if the student tries to avoid ground by bending his elbows. For example, if I realize, okay, I'm hitting too much ground most of the time, so I'm unconsciously gonna pull my arms inward and gonna bend my elbows. Unfortunately, no one's gonna do it like this, so the club is just a little bit higher, because everybody does it like this, and you're now not only gonna avoid ground, but you're also gonna hit it off the toe. So in this case, what I do is I tell the golfer he should address the ball over here, place a second ball over here, and now if he does it correctly, if he hits the sweet spot, only this ball is going to move. But as soon as he still pulls his arms inwards and bends his elbows, he will going to see, okay, I'm going to hit two balls. So he knows I need to concentrate more on extending my arms or keeping my arms straight to avoid the second ball. So these are examples for motions that are difficult insofar as they need to balance each other, so you always have to change either nothing at all or maybe two things. Now let's take a look at new mistakes that might creep in when you fix your erroneous path. If you identified the responsible mistake and fixed compensations if necessary, you have to be careful not to add new ones while executing a new motion. First of all, one thing that we as golf pros see a lot is if someone is trying to make his club head attack the ball more from the inside, he tries to help the whole process by leaning back with his upper body and by tilting his head just like I'm demonstrating now. And of course, this is going to lead to very fat shots, and it's not really helpful, and it's not necessary. You don't have to change anything with your upper body if you just want to drop your arms better and keep your club head longer behind you. So it's possible to attack the ball more from the inside without changing anything with your upper body motion. A second thing that happens very often is if someone was a pull slicer, and we know that his swing path was the problem and the club face was probably pretty good, he tries to attack the ball more from the inside, and all of a sudden he opens his club face, which he hasn't done before, by either cupping his left wrist or by trying to delay his hit. And this, of course, is also not very helpful. You don't have to change anything else but your swing path if you have been a pull slicer before. Over here, I just have my foam pipe, which I think is very helpful in trying to help someone not to swing from out to in anymore, because this foam pipe gives you feedback. As soon as you're doing it wrong, you're going to hit it, and then it's even better than having a video camera, which usually takes a few seconds until you get your feedback. It's very important to place it correctly, and this can be done by just addressing the ball over here. And you should be approximately a hand distance away from the foam pipe, and then you take a step to the left, and this is actually the place where you have to hit your ball from. Now, if you do it correctly, there's enough space to avoid the foam pipe, but what happens a lot is the student still swings down like this, and now he realizes, oh, this is not gonna make the way past the foam pipe, my shaft, and now he bends his arms in order to avoid the foam pipe. But the thing that will happen, of course, is he's gonna hit the ball off the toe. So the only way to avoid the additional mistake, which is bending the arms, is to place a second ball over here. And now the only way to contact the correct ball without contacting anything else is to swing down on the correct path and to avoid bending your arms. And as soon as you do either this, you're going to hit the foam pipe, or as soon as you're trying to avoid the foam pipe by bending your arms, you're going to hit the second ball. And also you're going to get immediate feedback, which will help you to learn the correct motion. If your original diagnosis was correct and you fixed your mistake together with possible compensations without adding new ones, you might still find it difficult to execute a new, unfamiliar swing which might feel very awkward. In this case, the most obvious thing to do is to reduce the tempo. Keep making full swings, not half ones, but do it in half the speed. Just like you would learn to use a typewriter with 10 fingers. Nobody would type like this and complain about typos all the time. Every sane person would reduce his typing speed until the speed matches his typing skills. Unfortunately, no one acts like this on a driving range. But believe me, it is possible to remain rational even with a golf club in your hand. Now let's imagine you considered everything you've learned so far, but you're still struggling. This might be because you're misinterpreting the feedback you get. First of all, the feedback is very misleading if you hit the ball off the toe or the heel with a wooden club. Because of the gear effect and the bulge of the club, you might get undeserved draws of the toe and undeserved fades of the heel. What's the solution in this case? I would recommend to practice with face tape, and I would only take the shots into consideration that you hit with the sweet spot. Second point, you need to be able to distinguish club face pulls from real pulls. I call it a real pull if your club head cuts across the ball and the face is perpendicular to the path. However, a pull might also result from a perfect or even an in-to-out path if the face is quite close at impact. Usually you would expect a pull hook from this combination, but if the club head speed is low and you're using a very lofted club, the ball will fly surprisingly straight. What also helps are old range balls that have worn out dimples. Third point, don't evaluate your shots just by the feeling at impact. It is possible that you have a wonderful feeling at impact with an out-to-in swing. If you contact the ball with a sweet spot, the feeling will always be nice. And it's also possible to approach the ball from the inside, but catch it, for example, slightly thin. And in this case, the second swing has to be evaluated as better, although the feeling might have been worse. Fourth point, most golfers aim to the right of the target on the golf course. If you do that and hit a straight shot, you might diagnose a push, which would be an overcorrection of your old pull. And to avoid this, you have to make sure that you aim straight, and you can do that by placing a shaft between your feet and the ball. Last point, if you work on your swing, use at least a 6-iron, because it's possible to hit straight shots with a short iron when you're cutting across the ball and the face is open just the right amount. I know this was a lot of information, but if you don't want to be a pull slicer for the rest of your life, you have to approach your problem different from the way you have in the past. Of course, you can hope that your pull hook or your pull slice disappears one day all by itself, but I wouldn't bet on it. Follow my approach and you will see a difference. Good luck.